Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we are diving into some seriously fascinating source material that basically bridges ancient theology directly with today's headlines. We're looking at the prophesied return of the Imam Mehdi. Now, whether you're a deep eschatology nerd or just kind of curious about how ancient religious texts are influencing the very real geopolitical narratives playing out right now on your news feeds, this explainer is going to visually map out some of the boldest claims made in the research. So let's get right into it. Real quick, here is our roadmap for today. We're covering the universal savior concept, geopolitics and prophetic signs, the Mahdi and his army, the battle against the Sufyani, global wars and conquests, and finally, the arrival of the Dajjal. Section 1. The universal savior concept. What's really cool here is that the source doesn't actually start exclusively with Islam. It pans out, showing how practically every major world religion is waiting for a messianic figure. You've got Hinduism's Kalki riding a white horse to fight oppression, Buddhism's Maitreya, the Messiah in Judaism, and of course, Jesus in Christianity. It establishes that this deep yearning for a savior, someone to step in and restore justice, is a universally human thing. It sets a brilliant stage for the specific Islamic prophecy we're digging into today. So, zooming into the Islamic perspective, the material defines the Mahdi, an Arabic term that literally means the guided one. And the source makes it super clear. This is not just some distant, abstract spiritual idea. It is heavily geopolitical. The anticipation of the Mahdi carries so much real-world gravity that even modern political heavyweights, supposedly including Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu, have acknowledged its massive influence over the Middle East. Section 2. Geopolitics and prophetic signs. Let's see how these ancient texts translate to modern reality. Okay, here's the core tension the source material wrestles with. On one side, you have these ancient prophecies talking about swords, horses, and desert skirmishes. But on the other side, our current reality. AI weapons, drone strikes, nuclear-armed superpowers. The big question the research poses is this: how on earth does one prophesied guy and his followers take on modern superpowers who hold literally all the high-tech cards? Well, to answer that, the texts map out some very specific precursors, signs that the Mahdi is basically knocking up the door. The source looks at today's headlines, things like the horrific Syrian civil war and the widespread global oppression of Muslims, and interprets them as direct fulfillments of prophecy. It also points to things yet to happen, like the chaos following the death of a prominent Arab king and a massive 3-day fire in the east. The analysis actually theorizes this fire could be an Iranian nuclear test, which honestly would shift the entire global power dynamic overnight. It's pretty wild to look at our daily news through such an ancient lens. Section 3. Mahdi and his army. So who exactly is rolling with the Mahdi when the time comes? The source zeroes in on a very specific, symbolic number, 313. The text says the Mahdi will initially be joined at the Kaaba in Mecca by 313 insanely intelligent, devoted companions. And if you're a history buff, you know that mirrors the exact number of fighters at the historic Battle of Badr. But the research points out these aren't just your regular foot soldiers. We're talking about brilliant commanders, scholars, and real tactical geniuses. Crucially, the source lays these ancient alliances right over today's map. It claims that forces from Khorasan, which is heavily linked to modern-day Iran, flying black flags, along with Yemeni factions like the Houthis, are positioned as the Mahdi's main allies. On the flip side, the USA, Israel, and the current Saudi monarchy are cast as the primary antagonists. Now, we are just impartially mapping out the source's claims here, but you have to admit, seeing ancient texts aggressively overlaid onto current global geopolitics like this is absolutely fascinating. Section 4. The battle against Sufyani. This brings us to the first major villain on the Mahdi's journey. The source describes a terrifying figure known as the Sufyani, a descendant of Muawiyah who emerges from the chaos of the Syrian civil war. The text alleges that this guy is a brutal warlord who, with backing from Western nations, will spread unimaginable bloodshed and terror across Iraq and Syria, specifically gunning for the Mahdi. But here is where things take a totally supernatural turn. The Sufyani supposedly sends out this massive army to crush the Mahdi. But instead of a drone strike or a massive shootout, the conflict supposedly ends with a literal divine miracle. The prophecy claims the Sufyani's entire army will just be swallowed whole by the earth in the desert of Beta. According to the analysis, it's this exact mind-bending event that finally forces the rest of the world, even the massive skeptics, to wake up and recognize the Mahdi's legitimacy. Section 5. Global Wars and Conquests.
The source lays out a really specific chain of events next. Step 1. The Mahdi inks a peace treaty with the Romans, which the research translates to modern Western powers or NATO. Step 2. They actually team up and score a joint military victory against a common enemy. But then, Step 3, a huge dispute breaks out over a raised cross, a massive cultural clash over who really won the fight. And finally, Step 4, this dispute totally shatters the treaty, plunging everyone into an unprecedented global conflict.
This broken alliance sparks what the source calls the bloodiest war in human history, set right in Syria or southern Turkey. Remember that ancient versus modern warfare contrast we brought up earlier? This is the climax. The Mahdi's forces are supposedly going toe-to-toe with high-tech Western armies, jets, AI, the whole 9 yards. The prophecies state that during this absolute nightmare of a battle, 1/3 of the Muslim army is going to flee in terror, 1/3 will be martyred, and the final third will somehow push through to ultimate victory. And right after that incredibly bloody, high-tech war, the text gives us a massive contrast. It claims the very next major event, the conquest of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, will be completely bloodless. According to the source, the massive city's defenses will just metaphorically crumble, handed over peacefully, driven entirely by the victorious army's overwhelming chants of Allahu Akbar. It's this striking, vivid image of raw faith just completely overpowering physical fortresses. Section 6. The Arrival of Dajjal. Let's step back and look at the big picture timeline the source presents. The whole sequence kicks off with the tragic assassination of an activist named Nafs-i-Zakiya, reportedly just 15 days before the Mahdi emerges. From there, you get the defeat of the Sufyani, and then those grueling global wars we literally just walked through. But right at the peak of their triumph in Istanbul, the army gets hit with some completely devastating news. The news is that the Dajjal, the ultimate deceiver, the false messiah, has stepped onto the board. He starts broadcasting false reports to the troops, claiming he's captured their homes and families back in the Middle East, sparking absolute panic. It's extreme psychological warfare, and it forces the Mahdi and his army to urgently drop their brand new conquests and sprint back to Syria to confront this supreme evil. And that is exactly where the source material leaves us hanging. It intentionally cuts off right before Jesus is prophesied to return to aid the Mahdi. It leaves us with one massive, lingering question. With the ultimate deceiver now entering the battlefield, someone who is equipped to twist reality itself, how on earth will the Mahdi survive the Dajjal? It's been an incredible ride unpacking how these ancient apocalyptic texts are being actively used to decode modern global conflicts. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the narratives shaping our world.